Okay, I'm waiting notification. And boom. And we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast. We have an amazing guest with us this afternoon, one who I'm very humbled would take time out of her busy schedule to come give us some information as well as some inspiration. And that is none other than Dr. Khalilah Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, ma'am.
Alaikum salam, sir. Thank you for allowing me to be on your show.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, ma'am. Well, the first thing, you watched us grow up. Me and my siblings grow up, and we've known you. You've known us more, our entire life, but we've got to know you from a distance. But I never got to really fully hear your story until recently. So, can you please tell us what it was like growing up in the Nation of Islam?
Well, first and foremost, I just want to say that I'm deeply humbled for this opportunity to share my story. And I'm deeply humbled by the story that I'm about to share. I grew up in Muhammad Mosque number 7 in New York City. My journey began by attending what was then known as Saturday school when I was 7 years old. And during that particular time period is when I got to know and be introduced to Sister Jana Muhammad, who is one of the regional captains of the Nation of Islam today, Sister Aisha Muhammad, who I also fondly refer to and is my auntie, who was the national captain of the Nation of Islam. I also was able to experience Sister Emeritus Karima Muhammad, who was also a former regional captain, East Coast regional captain of the Nation of Islam. And these are the pillars of my journey as a young woman growing up in Islam, from a girl to a teenager. These are the women that I was first introduced to in my early stages of the Nation of Islam. And I would just say growing up in New York was the best. In terms of New York being the heartbeat of the Nation of Islam is what it was referred to, and some may still refer to that. But I grew up under the voice of Minister Conrad, under the voice of Brother Hafiz Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him. I grew up under the voice of even Dr. Khalid, spent some time in New York City. I grew up under the voice of Brother Minister Hawk, Brother Minister Rowland. I could go on and on with some of the ministers during that time period who would mount the rostrum as students in the ministry of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Master Father Muhammad. Growing up in the mosque in New York was just like a big family, I was able to experience the fine cuisine, Muslim cuisine, as well as family, drilling. I was a part of the Junior Vanguard class at that time, one of the classes, and we often did sign language as a fundraiser. We were always at the mosque. There was always a meeting. There was always a fundraiser. So that we could continue to help the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and his work of rebuilding the nation. I also recall my father taking me to Madison Square Garden to hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan speak, which was something I'll never forget, the magnitude of people. And even at one point, he had to put me on his shoulders to move me through the crowd. It's so much more that I could say, but I hope that that's a good beginning to answer your first question.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. And when you were growing up in New York, did you ever see yourself eventually being close to the Most Honorable Louis Farrakhan and moving to Chicago? Was that ever a thought?
At one point in time, it was not a thought. And then when my auntie moved to Chicago, and I began to visit with her, it was a thought that crossed my mind. And then I kind of gave it up. And I said, because I was living in other places and I would visit. And I said, whatever Allah wills. And Allah moved me away from being close to Chicago, where at one point I was in Michigan and I thought I may end up in Chicago. And then my life went a different turn and I ended up in Atlanta and I ended up in Houston. And at that point, I was like, it may not be Allah's will, and I let it go. And so I'm just deeply humbled to be in a city and in a space where we get to experience him. You know, I heard my uncle say one time, Brother Minister Amin Muhammad, say that all the jewels come to the crown. And I I took that to heart one time when he said it, you know, because we were having a dialogue with regards to the life of Chicago and what it's like being in Chicago, having been born and raised in New York City, and then having the opportunity to live in other places. So I'm deeply humbled anytime I have an opportunity to be in close proximity of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and to be in the headquarters city. And as I'm experiencing life, academic life, personal life, you know, it gives me great pleasure to know that wherever I go, I am representing the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And that's just, it just gives me great pride. And I'm just deeply humbled to be able to strive to do that.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, ma'am. And Brother James sends a greetings. My sister Naima sends a greetings.
Oh,
Thank you all.
assalamu
Yeah, thank you all for liking, sharing, and subscribing to people's podcast. So many people show you love with their likes on Facebook. Thank you all.
alaikum.
Yes, ma'am. Now, Dr. Khalilah, what was it like for you the first time you met the Most Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan?
Wow. um, whew, mm. I I was really very shy, and I had an opportunity to be blessed to be able to serve the guests that were at his table in the home of Sister Captain Emeritus Karima Muhammad. And I had the opportunity, after serving, the minister greeted us and asked us our names. And he asked me my name, and I said, Sister Khalilah, and my voice cracked. And then he asked me, How old are you? And I said, 16. And I couldn't say anything else. I was just moved and again, just really grateful to be able to be in his presence. And I was grateful that he took the time to even ask us our names and to see who we were that were being blessed to serve at his table.
Wonderful. Yes, ma'am. And how long, when did you realize, because, people who grow up in the nation, some people don't fully always say the Most High Minister Farrakhan is who he is. What was it? When did you recognize and say, okay, this man is the divinely guided, he's the man of God? When did that go off in you?
I think, growing up in the mosque, you always hear, I'm sure you can relate, but it really wasn't until I started as a young adult and as an adult going through my own trials and tribulations, personal trials and tribulations, where I could bear witness to who he is. And even having an opportunity of being interviewed by him in a very private setting for Muhammad University of Islam, where I could say that I could bear witness and experience who he is. Through the series of conversations that I had with him at that particular moment, or I should say the series of questions that he asked me, and that really confirmed for me by way of what he asked and by way of also some of the works that I was able to experience in one particular project that I was able to experience on his behalf. So having to work on this particular project and then having the opportunity to be in his presence and to witness the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Master Father Muhammad, informing him in that moment is when I could honestly say that I was able to experience a deeper level of faith and understanding in who he is. Although I strove to be very studious, as a young person growing up in Islam, based upon the challenges that I experienced, having a mother who was sick, having a father who eventually moved out of New York City, and having this big extended family in New York City as well as in Chicago. But Allah gives you trials that are for you, right? And you have to build your relationship with the God. And then Allah also works through others. So I was able to bear witness, to who he is by way of my desire to study, to learn the word, to be able to take what he's telling us and put it into practice and learn from making my own mistakes. And then also seeking counsel, and Allah blessing me with the support of my extended family member in New York City, my extended family member here in Chicago, and my extended family members that I acquired in moving in different places, that I was able to really see who the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is. And that is something that I'm still deeply moved by in my opportunities when I have them, to be in his presence or to have conversations with him, and to continue to bear witness to who he is and who he is becoming, is something that is sometimes so hard to put into words, but it's definitely close in my heart and in my mind.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. Um, thank you, Sis Naima, for sharing the video, and those who shared it, to love it. And my sister Mimi says, Assalamu alaikum. Sis Aisha can now hear. Boom. My next question is, speaking, how has the pandemic affected you, and how have you been functioning during the pandemic?
Well, the pandemic has really been awesome for me because one highlight is I'm a newlywed. So I got married during the pandemic. So while others may focus on loss, I'm able to focus on blessings, and I'm able to focus on reasons to be grateful to Allah. I'm also able to bear witness to him answering my prayers. Allah says, pray to me and I will answer. And I would say that during the pandemic, one example of that is beginning the journey of marriage. I would also say that it's given me an opportunity to be more self-reflexive. It's given me an opportunity to realize some areas where I need to work on myself, and some areas where I recognize what my strengths are and what my gifts are. And when Allah gives you a gift, you have to share it. You have to manifest it. You have to work on it, work in it. So I think that, the pandemic, while we are in our chambers, if we listen and follow the voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, we should be finding ourselves experiencing happiness, peace, joy, right? And we know that even in experiencing the trials, which may bring us pain, if we continue to listen and focus and do what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says to do, and to stay away from what he says to stay away from, then we know that we can experience heaven at once. So for me, while I have much to reflect on that's positive. As we're going through the pandemic, I had an uncle that passed, but I was able to reflect on what Allah blessed me to experience with him. And I was also able to help one of my cousins, one of his daughters that was really struggling. So there's much that I could say about the pandemic that has been positive. It's also an opportunity as a registered Muslim and a member of the MGT and GCC class, the greatest class on the planet Earth. I've had an opportunity to practice my units, canning, having an opportunity to sanitize, disinfect, clean my home, so if we're, again, being obedient to the voice of God, then we should be able to experience positive and pleasant moments in our lives despite the pandemic.
All praise due to Allah. Sister Aisha out of Phoenix says, beautiful testimony. My sister Naima says, teach. My sister Miriam says, yes. Okay, newlywed. Thank you, Mimi. Go, you get them. Okay. My next question is, I often ask the brothers about the Most High Minister Farrakhan and the sisters as well, but I always ask the sisters about Mother Farrakhan. What has been your experience with her, and how is she, on stage and behind the stage?
Well, I would say that I can bear witness to the beauty and the majesty and the wonder, the righteousness, a quintessential example of what it means to be a Muslim woman and follower of Master Father Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I can say all of those things by starting with if you see my profile picture for Facebook, it is a picture of myself and Mother Khalilah Farrakhan. And that is not the only picture that I have been blessed to take with her. So for me, I can say so much about the love that I feel when I'm in her presence, and the love that I feel for her, for all her sacrifices, for her dedication to the mission of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and having the opportunity to speak with her, about being patient, even when I was not married, having the opportunity to learn from her about the importance of family, um, and being a Muslim woman, or I should say a Muslim girl, that if we adhere to what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is giving us in the class, then we will surely be successful. And I think that Mother Khadijah Farrakhan continues to show us the way.
Excellent, excellent. The Million Man March. So, as a woman, what was that? Ours as a brother, how did it impact them? But how did it impact you as a sister?
Well, first and foremost, I was in Chicago, at my auntie's house, and she was one who was blessed along with your mother, Sister Sharifa Muhammad. May Allah be well pleased with her.
Yeah,
they were there together, and I was at home at my auntie's house. And she had left things for me because I came to her home from college. I was in college at the time, to be there to witness the Million Man March. I did have family members, male family members, who were in attendance, like my father, my brothers, cousins, uncles, so to witness the power of Allah on that day, to hear the voice of God through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, to see the peace, to see the desire for the Black man to be restored to his rightful place, to take the pledge, to be able to come in droves and then leave without evidence that you were ever present, is something that I just was like, wow, it just bore witness to the power of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's relationship with the God, and to see others who were also able to bear witness to that, to hear the voice of Mother Tanetta Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with her, on that day. It was just something that I wish that others, the students that I speak with, or young people that know nothing about it, that I feel that it's a great disservice for them not to know. And it is our responsibility for those who were present, whether it was through the watching it on TV or actually physically there, to make sure that the young people behind us know about that historic event. It is nothing like it, unparalleled, right? And it's funny because during that time period, I was in college and I attended a predominantly white institution. And I recall being in one of my classes where one of the students spoke out in ignorance. And the few Black students in the class, which included myself, we protested because of his ignorance and because of how my professor was unequipped to handle the diversity in the classroom with us being present. I ended up speaking with my professor, and she asked me, well, why didn't you all come to class? And I said, well, the way that you allowed him to speak about the Million Man March afterwards was offensive. So she asked me, well, what should I have done? And I said, well, when you're in a class where it's diverse, you have to have ground rules, because you may have Caucasian students or other ethnicities that don't know the knowledge of self, that will speak out of turn and displaying a disrespect to the Black students in your class. So she asked me, well, what would be some of those ground rules? So I suggested some of the ground rules because she was also my advisor, and I had a conversation. I had to meet with her and have a conversation with her outside of class. So I shared the ground rules, and then the next time, all of us went back to class,
Beautiful.
and we were able to have a dialogue about race, and we were able to talk about freely why the Million Man March was such an important experience for us to witness, and particularly as Black students at a predominantly white institution.
Praise be to Allah. Excellent, excellent. Um, you being in New York, you know, there's all of the muggins, the rats, the subways, you know, gritty cities, the boroughs, and all of that. And then you move to Chicago, cold, you know, all kind of stuff. Have you ever been faced with fear? And if so, how do you overcome that fear?
Um, First of all, New York has a lot of grit, but it also is a great city, I feel, for anyone to experience living in. And
Mm,
if you can make it in New York, they say, you could make it anywhere,
yes,
right?
ma'am.
So, I don't recall having fear in walking the streets of New York City at all.
Mm, mm,
I even recall being in my headpiece on 125th Street, you know, as a junior MGT Vanguard, feeling quite prideful and comfortable, and even walking past some of the Hebrew Israelites who sometimes were disrespectful, but I didn't have any fear, and I didn't have any fear even when they may have spoken in a particular manner because the FOI are the FOI, So I didn't really have any fear, whether it was on 125th Street, representing by wearing my headpiece or being in other parts of New York City in the Village, Queens, the Bronx. I didn't really have fear at all. Of course, we know all general orders are in effect, right?
yes, ma'am.
And
Yes,
we
ma'am.
know a soldier must be alert and observant, right? So those were all tools that I utilized while walking the streets of New York City or riding in a taxi cab or whatever. But in living in Michigan and living in Atlanta and also in Houston, I didn't have any fear either. I recall when I did not have a car. I'm so deeply humbled to have a vehicle. But I recall when I was in graduate school in Atlanta and in Michigan that I took the train.
Mm,
And not being from Atlanta and not being in and taking a bus, pardon me, in Michigan, but I was not afraid. I
mm,
stood at the bus stop sometimes by myself, in the snow because I had to take the bus to school. But I wasn't afraid. My father was more concerned about me doing it. And he said, "Well, I have to get you a car." But that never happened because of the hands of time. But Allah blessed me in other ways to be able to get around, friends that have vehicles. But I don't recall having fear at all. Taking the train in Atlanta, which when I moved to Atlanta to work on my PhD at Georgia State University, most people were not taking the train,
mm,
but being from New York, I was familiar with the subway system and I was able to figure out how to get from A to B. And my mind was focused on the goal, which was at each step for me to complete my educational path. So I didn't allow the new experiences or the lack of understanding of a city I didn't grow up in to disallow me to complete the goal. You know, so I don't remember having fear whether it was transportation or whether it was fear by dealing with the Caucasian and the nature of who he is and who she is in the classroom. Like I didn't have fear because,
praise be to Allah.
as a Muslim follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and as a product of the Nation of Islam, we know the nature of the Caucasian. So even in terms of being in different academic arenas, I always strove to represent Islam, and I was not fearful of what that meant even during the time period of 9/11.
Okay. Well, speaking of 9/11, how was that?
Well, at the time period of 9/11, I had taken a break from finishing one degree and in preparing for the next, right? So I was in New York City. I was at my grandmother's home. I was actually sleeping on the couch. And
Mm.
we received various phone calls. I recall having a conversation with my auntie Aisha. She was calling, trying to see where I was, but I was at home. I was in the company of my grandmother, and I recall other believers like Sister Jana and Sister Olivia, New York City, who worked downtown in that area. But on that day, they were not at work. You know, so the power of Allah and striving to be a Muslim, Allah keeps you away from certain things and puts you in the places where you need to be. So, I could see the smoke. My grandmother lived on 108th Street, which is in East Harlem, and you could see the smoke from downtown as it moved uptown. You could see it in the sky. Um, but I was at home. But I did have to go, start my graduate work some months after. But I didn't have any fear about being a Muslim, you know.
Wow,
And
wow.
I recall doing a presentation in one of my literature classes where I was able to uh, extract some Muslim principles in a piece of literature. And I was able to teach the class what the five pillars of Islam were, because this piece of literature that we were looking at in this British literature class had some undercurrents of Islam. And I was the only person in the class that could see that because, of course, I'm attending graduate school in the Bible Belt. I'm in Atlanta.
Yes, ma'am.
So most people are looking at this piece of literature and connecting it to Christianity. But growing up as a Muslim, and as a striving Muslim follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Min Farrakhan, I saw the natural connection to Islam because we know Islam is universal. You know,
Yes, ma'am.
so during that time period, I was not afraid to connect Islam, and my presentation was very well received because it was different, but it also was a time period where everyone was reading and observing and wondering about Islam because of 9/11.
Wow, wow, wow. Beautiful. Yes,
Praise
ma'am.
Allah.
And people are saying all praises to Allah, showing you love in the comments, saying that's right, teach, you a soldier, go off, sis. Okay, all of that kind of good stuff in the
Praise
comments.
be to Allah. Allahu Akbar.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, now, Dr. Khalilah, we have a quick 60-second commercial break to show all of the sponsors of the People's Podcast. 1 second. I
Yes,
thank you all this month, all of the sponsors who, 1 second, here we go, boom, and just like that. I want to thank everyone who sponsored. If you would like to be a sponsor, not you, Dr. Khalilah,
yes,
people who
sir.
are in the viewing audience to be a sponsor or a donor, please cash app the People's Podcast. We greatly appreciate it. My brother Rashad, Street Premiere Media Production. He has a 4K camera and a drone. He does television and film editing, and he's always working on a new project. So reach out to him if you need something done. My sister Miriam's children's book and coloring book, ABC I Love Me, both of which are on Amazon. Make sure we go out and get that. My sister Naima, Stay on Point Dance Academy, LLC. She teaches ballet virtually to young girls all across the country. We love our tiny dancers. Get signed up for that. Nations Auto Sales, LLC, out of St. Louis, Missouri. Shipping cars and trucks. Thank you very much for that, brother. MTS Car Bros, any make, model, any year, out of Los Angeles. They'll ship the cars to you anywhere right now. Thank you very much for your sponsorship. Raising Black Millionaires, Sister Tia Muhammad. She teaches economic empowerment and development to young Black children through flashcards. Brother Kenneth Muhammad, bow tie maker extraordinaire, out of New York, but lives in Atlanta now. Thank you very much. The Detroit Mecca Project, Brother Kamal Muhammad, working in Detroit, trying to fix up the houses in the neighborhoods so that you make a community safe and decent place to live. Thank you very much for the Detroit Mecca Project. Brother Chantel X, he hires truck drivers and pays them weekly. He also specializes in refrigeration, the X and Express. Thank you very much, Brother Chantel. Coming right back to you, Dr. Khalilah. The
Yes,
Real
sir.
Hip Hop Network, they have their own app and it's taking off right now. It's a way for you to get paid for your stream. So if you have a platform, if you sing, you dance, whatever you do, put it on the Real Hip Hop Network and make sure you support your own. Excellent. Brother Jabbar Muhammad, Client First Construction, painting, carpentry, flooring, plumbing, etc. in the Chicago area and the Memphis, Tennessee area as well. Um, Sister Landra Muhammad has a new book called Mastering of the Seven Units. It's a sister's pathway to do for self. Stop talking the teachings and do the teachings. Thank you very much. Dr. Henry M. Carter, King Henry's Turkey Legs here in Atlanta, Georgia. Brother Rashad Muhammad in Chicago, COVID-19 disinfecting cleaning services. My father's book, A Soldier in the Movement of Christ, AbdulSharif.com. And last but not least, my two books, Cleopatra, which is a children's book on Amazon, and No Father, No Excuse. Thank you all for your sponsorships and donors. Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Khalilah, what has been your greatest trial in your tenure in the nation, and how have you overcome that?
Uh, I think my greatest trial is, and it's still a trial, I would say, is rising above emotion into the thinking of God. You know, we have experiences, study guide number 18, we have experiences that happen to us that Allah, you know, allows. And oftentimes, sometimes your emotions can get the best of you as you are going through different trials and tribulations. When I think about some of the experiences that I've had, blessings, but nonetheless trials, right? In terms of the loss of my parents, the loss of my grandmothers, having to move different places in pursuit of my educational dreams and fulfillment. Uh, I can go on, you know, in terms of growing up in Islam, and sometimes you have those who don't understand Islam and striving to be a Muslim, you know, going away to college and sustaining one's virtue, and striving to be a Muslim, but also striving to have a particular experience, educational experience. Uh, I can just think of a multitude of examples, but I think the key example that I always see as a pattern in my life where Allah is still working with me is rising above my own emotions, getting out of my own way, you know, so that I can see Allah's hand and I can reap the benefits of what Allah is trying to show me. And I think that that's an undercurrent in my life, you know, where I can see I've improved. But we know that, you know, the struggle for balance, the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan said, is lifelong. You know, so there's going to be things that are going to happen, you know, where we have to continue to build our relationship with the God. You know, so I would say that, you know, one of those areas is really understanding that Allah is sufficient, you know, and we can say it and we can hear it, but it's nothing like realizing that for ourselves. And sometimes when we think we've realized it, Allah gives us another situation to manifest it, right? So the things that I may have thought I had a handle on, you know, because Allah wants to use me and because I want to grow, He represents something else, you know.
Yes, ma'am.
So, you know, I think if we can really build our relationship with Rabbil Alameen, you know, and recognize that his sufficiency, he's the guide, he's the best knower, you know, all of that takes time in life to really understand. You know, we don't want to be Muslims that are quotologists, you know, but we want to be Muslims that are applying the teachings and living the teachings. But sometimes growing up, we're not always told that that has to happen by going through life. You know, nothing happens by osmosis. You know, yes, we have the power to think, and Allah blesses us to bring things into existence. But or I should not say, but in addition to that, though, it's about going through life where Allah can help you to strengthen your relationship with Him.
love that.
So I would say that, rising above my own emotions, because sometimes my perception is off, you know, and I may not see what Allah is trying to show me or trying to do with me or with us or people around me. That would be my answer to that particular question.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. And what? Speaking of education, going to get your doctorate. I am a big proponent of education, and I try to encourage people. What is the most honorable mental Farrakhan started on education based off your interaction with him, and how have you been able to use education to help the nation?
Well, part of the reason why I am residing in Chicago is connected to education. I moved here to work at Muhammad University of Islam. I had an opportunity before I moved here to be a guest of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for a educational meeting or conference that he was hosting primarily for the MUI here in Chicago. So my educational experience is what brought me to Chicago. And I know that it is the desire, of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for me to return back to Muhammad University of Islam at the appropriate time. But I would say that when I was teaching at Muhammad University of Islam, it was some of the best teaching of my entire life. So to start your day off with Islamic studies is the way to start the day, to start with the word of God, and then to move into those particular areas of study, curriculum, and to also be able to have the distinct honor to experience a professional development taught by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan at Muhammad University was something that I was able to witness along with the wonderful teachers at Muhammad University of Chicago and the staff. Under the direction at that time of Brother Dr. Larry Muhammad, we were blessed time and time again to be able to be under the voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, where he could teach us how to teach and be educators and be the support staff for that school. So that is one of my highlights, one of the best times of my life, to be able to be in his presence and to hear him guide us and offer us instruction on being educators and being teachers.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. What has been your greatest joy in your tenure in the Nation of Islam?
I would say that my greatest joy is being a member of the Vanguard class. It was being a member of the junior MGT class as well, but of course, at a certain point, we had to transition. But I would say being a member of the Vanguard class, which is an elite squad within the MGT class, and now being a member of the MGT class, is my greatest joy because, we have 7 training units, how to, right? And we are always in the process of learning how to be an MGT, learning how to sew, how to cook, how to act at home and abroad, how to rear our children, how to take care of our husband. That is a lifelong journey. And it is a journey where we are able to practice being students and where we are able to practice our Islam. So I would say that that's the greatest experience, the greatest achievement, looking at some of the projects that we have been able to complete under the direction of our sister national MGT captain, Sister Naima Muhammad. And so I would just say that if we are in the class, we are active members in the class. There is never a time where you can't find joy, where you can't find growing, where you can't find happiness, where you can't find sisterhood, So I would say that, we could never, like it says in the Holy Quran, you could never exhaust the wisdom of God. You could never exhaust what the MGT class has to offer the Black woman in America.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. Excellent. Thank you all for continuing to watch the People's Podcast. Speaking of, being a newlywed, what advice would you give to future wives?
I would say that it is important to build your relationship with Allah. I would say as a single person. And I would say that it is important to strive to practice and learn your 7 units. You know, uh, we practice in preparation for the future, right? So some of our units we may think are not in time, but Allah is the best knower. So 1 year to the next, you never know what Allah will do in your life. So I think that, for sisters who are not married, that it's very important that you build your relationship with Allah. That it's very important that you get to know yourself, because once you have the responsibility of how to take care of your husband and how to rear your children, it is important that you know you so that you have an opportunity to be able to figure out what's best for you and your family, right? We shouldn't wait until we get married to care for ourselves, to cook, to clean, to sew, all of those things we should be doing until Allah blesses us with whom He desires. We should be striving to fulfill the goals that we may have for our individual selves, striving to be Muslims. There's so much in Muslim life that we can gain from if we would just practice to be Muslims, and sustaining one's virtue, to be pleasing to Allah. Those are all things that we should be striving to do as single sisters in preparation for when Allah will allow us to then experience the other half of faith. So, I think that sometimes we may delay the process of preparing, but every day as you live by yourself or you blessed to live with your family is a day to prepare to be a wife. And then of course you want to build your relationship with Allah because you will experience things that you didn't anticipate, and I also think having good counsel, having the proper married sisters in your life that are happily married and are striving Muslims is something that you will fulfill more of it when you get married, but it isn't a disadvantage to be able to prepare yourself, so that you can understand, even understand yourself better in preparation for when you get married. So I think, doing for self, building your relationship with Allah, following the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and what we are mandated to be as Muslim women, and to also, experience good sisterhood. I think it's also important for those of us that are young to have healthy relationships with our elders. Oftentimes, we may think that we know, but to experience the wisdom of a Muslim woman, in the class, who's been in the class longer than you, and someone who's married is priceless. It's unparalleled, So I could say more, but I want to keep within time.
It's beautiful, a lot beautiful, and people are, showing you love as people on the People's Podcast business page on Facebook and liking and sharing. Thank you all. Now, Dr. Khalilah, I have a question for the Lost Mount viewers who may be watching, people who, are understanding what misconceptions about the women in the Nation of Islam would you, if you could just dispel one of them?
Well, I would just say that we are not oppressed. Oftentimes people have a misunderstanding of what a Muslim woman is, but, as it says in the Holy Quran, we are made in the same essence and in the same likeness, And I would like to say that the Honorable Minister Lord Farrakhan is the only one that lifts the Black woman, the Black Muslim woman, the way that he does, So while people think that we are oppressed because they have a mixing of truth and falsehood, but in the Nation of Islam, we are very happy practicing Muslims, and we are very happy soldiers in the army of God. We get to reflect the feminine expression of Islam, but we are also part of God's army. And we want to be of those who reflect that military posture when necessary, So I think that in the Nation of Islam, from my upbringing, I have always experienced the support of my family and my friends in pursuit of my own goals, in pursuit of even my educational goals, So for those, I believe, and I'm not going to quote it exactly, but in looking at the Constitution, our provisional Constitution, right, we are a detriment if we don't study. So as women, we have to study, and we have to edify ourselves. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that 75% of the work is with the woman. Well, that means that we have to be found striving to reflect that, which means to study, which means to build our relationship with Allah, which means to strive to reflect his feminine expression of Islam, So I think that while the world may view a Muslim woman as being oppressed, experience the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and you will see that the Black woman and the Black Muslim woman in America is not oppressed. Because a nation can rise no higher than this woman. And although that is a statement that we hear, that is a statement that we practice in Islam.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. And Dr. Khalilah, do you have any plans on going into the ministry?
Well, I am one of the members of the orientation team here in Chicago, which I understand the orientation class is part of the ministry. I have spoken with student minister Ishmael Muhammad about one day speaking from the rostrum. I'm so nervous about that opportunity. It's such an honor and it's such a great responsibility, that I think about it and I'm just deeply humbled. But I want to do what Allah is pleased with. So if that is his desire, then at some point it will occur. In the meantime, I'm very comfortable working out in the orientation class for the MGT and GCC, which is part of the ministry of the Nation of Islam. So I would say in that regard, I am in that particular area working in the ministry, and what Allah has for me in terms of whether or not I will speak in another avenue or venue, we will see.
Praise be to Allah. Beautiful. What do you do for fun?
I love watching movies.
Okay.
I loved going to the movies, but now it's Netflix. Now it's Amazon Prime, Hulu. I love listening to music. I'm an old school hip hop person. So I like Biggie.
Okay.
I like Busta Rhymes. I like MC Lyte. I like De La Soul. I like The Roots. I like oh my gosh, Jay-Z. On the Run tour with Beyonce was an experience. Okay.
Yes,
but I love music. I like Prince, Earth, Wind and Fire, Maze. I have quite an eclectic selection in my Tidal account. But music is something that inspires me. I love John Coltrane. I listen to him when I'm writing or when I'm grading papers. What else? I like thrift shopping. I like a good buy, a good steal. I like cooking. I like learning new recipes. I
Okay,
like,
okay.
collaborating with my auntie or sister Lawita, or, FaceTiming some of my sister friends in Houston, Oshia and Wakiti. We'll FaceTime and cook and talk, you know. So I like reading recipes and figuring out and consulting with the chefs in my family, on how to make something healthier, or what's the Muslim remix on a recipe. Um, I like walking. Um, I like the beach. It's nothing like the sound of the ocean, watching the sunset. Um, what else? I like traveling. I have not been on a plane since February of 2019, and I can't even believe it, because I normally would go on a vacation with one of my sister friends. We do it at least once a year, Allah willing. Or I definitely get back to New York because I got to get some pizza, or a black and white cookie, or some halal chicken wings, or a bagel. I got to have my New York fix. I got to walk the streets
Mm-hmm.
of New York City. So traveling is another way. I love reading. I will read
Mm-hmm.
3 different books at a time, 4 different books at a time. I love studying. I love writing. I enjoy mostly writing expository essays. I've had a few articles in the Final Call newspaper. I've also published a few articles on Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison is my muse. She
Mm-hmm.
inspires me. She's who I wrote my dissertation on. When I hear her voice and I read her, I hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So I think that's all I can think of for now. I'm sure there's more I could say.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Will you ever write a book?
Allah willing, I would like to write a book, and I would like it to be a New York Times bestseller. Not only because at heart I will always be a New Yorker, but I've enjoyed some of the books that I've read off the New York Times bestseller list. Don't judge me, y'all, in terms of, that particular newspaper. Maybe one day we'll have a Final Call bestseller list, But in the meantime, I pray to Allah that He will allow me to use my pen to write something that will impact the minds of my readers. What Lupe Fiasco say, the ink of a scholar is 1,000 times more than the blood of a martyr.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right? So I pray to Allah that my pen, will contribute something to society. When you read about the writers of the Black arts movement, and during that time period, and even before the Harlem Renaissance, those writers spoke to having a social responsibility. Artists have a social responsibility to reflect the world, but to also respond to it. And when you look at writers like Langston Hughes and George Schuyler and Arthur Schomburg and Sonia Sanchez and June Jordan, and and you look at writers like Morrison and Ellison and Richard Wright, and there's a social responsibility that they all had. When I think about Native Son, and I think about Invisible Man, Ralph Ellison and Richard Wright were responding to each other through writing on what it means to be a Black man in America.
Yes, ma'am.
Just the way that Jay-Z responds to Nas. So I think that, artists have a responsibility to the world. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has spoken to that in his address to the hip hop community, in the meetings that he has to squash beef and to remind the artists of their role. So whether an artist likes it or not, you're responsible to the community in which you reflect, because you have viewers that are epitomizing your art, that are epitomizing the gifts that Allah gave you. So we have to use it in the proper manner.
Beautiful. All praise due to Allah. And thank you all for liking, sharing, and subscribing to the People's Podcast. And thank you, Dr. Khalilah. We have one more question for you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
What would you like your legacy to be?
Wow. I would like my legacy to be that I strove hard to be a Muslim woman and a follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and that I reflected, pardon me, all that Master Fard Muhammad is giving us through them. And I would like, pardon me, that within the Nation of Islam, that I would offer a great contribution to Muhammad University of Islam, because that is the university. And I would like to be a part of the body of teachers and curriculum writers and educators that will please the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan with what he desires for that school. So.
Praise be to Allah. And
Yes.
Dr. Khalilah, I have women viewers who, especially on YouTube, who want to learn and need some mentorship. Is there any way that some of the sisters can reach out to you? Do you have an email or something?
Absolutely. My email is T as in teach, Y as in yes, R as in righteous, and I as in Islam, the number 19 at gmail.com.
Beautiful. So you're definitely judging my email, because mine email out of here.
It's okay. That's for my middle name, and my favorite chapter of the Holy Quran is Surah 19, Maryam.
Praise be to Allah.
Yes, sir.
I want to get mine is F as in Farrakhan, H as in Hadith. I want to thank you, Dr. Khalilah, for coming on and giving us some information as well as inspiration. Thank everybody for watching. We're going to put it on YouTube. Please like, share, and subscribe. May Allah continue to bless you. And thank you for your sacrifice and the sacrifice of your family as well, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for placing me in this position and giving me this great honor to be on the show. Blessed is one who forges the way for others. So I'm very grateful for all the other interviews that you've conducted, and which includes some of my family members, so that I could be archived within this interviewing process. So I thank you very much, and may Allah continue to bless you with this show. And I got to make another donation. I'm sorry.
Oh, praise be. We appreciate that.
Yes, sir. May Allah continue to bless you and your family.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.